Let's get cooking. Welcome back to the Science of Taste series with the Academy of Edible Sciences and Ethno-gastronomy. I'm Chef Meg, Executive Director, and we're here on a beautiful sunny day in North County, California, San Diego, at one of our educational partners with Sand and Straw Community Farm in Vista. And I have with me today one of our special guests. This is Chef Jason Baker of Flavor Affinity. Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself and what we're going to be doing today.
Sure. Chef Jason Baker again with Flavor Affinity. We are a small private chef and special event company located in North County, coastal San Diego. Mm-hmm. We do actually service all of San Diego County and some of southern Orange County as well. Oh, nice. We focus on modern coastal cuisine. There is a pretty strong emphasis on seafood. And a lot of the bounty that actually comes along with, everything that we can find in California. It seems like there's always great fresh produce, especially coming from Sand and Straw. Been working with them for a couple of years now, and they just have exceptional produce, regenerative agriculture, all organic, really the best stuff around. We offer a lot of different services, party sizes from 10 to 100. So. That's kind of where we're
nice.
at.
Yeah, we're super excited too to be working with Sand and Straw. We're going to be offering some summer classes right here in this outdoor kitchen space. It looks like we're indoors. We're semi-indoors. It also opens kind of up to the farm here. It's a really beautiful space. And we're going to be doing some really fun science hands-on classes as well with teens this summer for some of our summer camps. So yeah, it's a beautiful spot, and we've got a lot planned here. So today, though, we are going to be looking at all things fish. When I asked Chef Jason if he would participate in this series, I said, hey, we've got a few of these episodes left, and there's fish, there's meat, there's la la la. And he's like, oh, fish, all the way, let's do fish together. Yes. So I said, that's great, because seafood is my jam too. So I'm happy that you can join us today. Sure. And I think the best way to start with talking about all things fish is to talk about the anatomy, because the form follows the function, right? And how we're going to end up cooking it, the best ways of preparing different cuts, different types of fish, different species, the fat content versus the protein content. It all has to do with its anatomy, and then the best methods of how to cook it. So let's go to the whiteboard. So looking at our fish anatomy, starting with classification, just because I want to mention the fact that obviously fish, yes, they're animals. They are from phylum Chordata, so they're chordates. We are also phylum Chordata. We follow under the same classification there. However, when it comes to the class, they are called osteichthyes. And osteichthyes refers to the bony skeleton, okay? There's a different fish class that's not osteichthyes that's called class chondrichthyes, and that's all of the cartilaginous fishes. So if you're thinking like sharks, right? So our bony fishes, those are most of the type of fish that we eat, most of the fish when we go to the market that we're gonna buy. That means that when you're cutting down the fish, you have to pay attention to that skeleton, whether you're gonna remove it or break it down in a certain way, which Chef Jason will show us a wonderful way of breaking down some fish a little bit later. And looking at the basic body plan of a bony fish, It has a dorsal side, which is this kind of top side of the fish. It has a ventral side, which is the belly side. It has a anterior end, which is where the head's located, and a posterior end, which is where the caudal fin, what we call the tail, and the caudal fin is located. Going through the different fins, just so you can be a little bit familiar with some of its anatomy, we have the ventral fin, so on the ventral side. There's a pectoral fin for most of these bony fishes, pectoral for us as well, so kind of chest area, right, anterior. There's a dorsal fin, so on its top side. And then we have an anal fin for most fish as well, and a caudal fin, that posterior tail. But I grouped some examples of fish according to whether their oil content, their fat content is higher, or whether the fat content is lower. And interestingly enough, most of our white fish that we're going to eat, such as cod and sea bass, we have an example of some sea bass here, they're always lower in fat content, okay? So they're a leaner cut of fish. That means that in the pan too, it's gonna fry up a little bit differently. For salmon, they are higher in fat, and for tuna, they're actually lower in fat level. Tuna are very active hunters of animals, so they are gonna have a lot more protein in their body. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the difference between farm-raised and wild-caught. I feel like most people have questions about that. What's better? Is one better than the other? So we picked up an option of both. Can you tell which one is which on here? What do you think, Jason?
This is wild, and that's farmed.
Right. So typically when you do go to the store or the market, at least when we're talking about salmon, that color of a wild-caught salmon is going to be a lot richer, a lot darker. And that has to do with the fact that they're out in the wild and the diet that they're eating actively is just really high in what's called carotenoids. So that's what gives them their distinct color. So we're talking really crustaceans. They have a diet that's high in crustaceans. Now, the farm-raised is gonna have a little more orangey kind of color to it. And they do have some synthetic carotenoids that's added to their diet.
And you can also see that the fat content on this one is significantly higher than this. And that has a lot to do with the actual activity and lifestyle that the fish leads before it's caught and killed.
Right.
You know, farm raised, they obviously don't have as much room to swim. They don't have as much room to move around. They're not migrating to different areas, swimming long distances like salmon tend to do. So there's a lot more muscle and a lot more fat, you know, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something that's easily identifiable. Another thing is there's a lot of misconceptions about farm-raised fish. You know, that they're dirty, that they're stuck in pens, and you know that is true in some places. But I think the important thing is to know where your fish comes from and how it was treated when it was alive. Right. Is really more important than whether or not it's farm-raised or wild.
Agreed. Yeah, and even with the wild caught, there can be drawbacks depending on how they're caught. Yeah. Right? So it's not just because they're wild caught, it's always the way to go. Yes, my understanding is that they will be higher in omega-3 fatty acids, which is a healthier fat for you than the omega-6, which, you know, the farm-raised might have a little higher of that level. But yeah, as Jason mentioned, even for the farm-raised fish, that because of their activity level, because it's probably lower, and because they're being fed a diet, a lot of times they don't even have to try and fight to feed, right? So they're not going to have the same type of muscle, which is the flesh that we're eating. So there are clear differences between the two, and I completely agree with Jason that I think just having awareness of the practices of the farmers that are raising these, which as far as I know, most farm-raised salmon are going to be coming from Norway, are going to be coming from Chile. So those are the main regions. And then for wild caught, it's mainly coming from Alaska, from Russia, from colder climates. Super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so next up, we're going to have Chef Jason cut down some fish for us to butcher and show you kind of the best, easiest way to do that and clean the fish down so that you have minimal waste. So we'll leave it to Jason.
All right. So we have a beautiful little Branzino here. First thing we want to do is make sure it's relatively dry. You know, it's easier to work with that way. We're always going to take off the fin. And then after you take the fin off, you can go ahead and just cut right behind the head. Should be relatively easy to do there. Do a quick cut on the back here. And again, this fish is already gutted. So that makes things a little easier. So when you do go and buy, if you ask for the fish to be cleaned and gutted, you can still buy a whole fish. You can cook it whole, or you can break down the fillets as well. So we will go ahead and just take another little cut here. Along the back here. If you press down with the blade against the spine, you're going to get less waste there, and then you're basically just meeting your cut in the back. Do a little cleanup of the fillet. Any pin bones that are sticking out, you can use a pin bone tweezer, you can use your knife, whatever you like. Just going to do a little cut here. And for a Branzino, that is essentially your cut. Right here. All right, so we have our Branzino fillets here, skin on. We're gonna season them. We're gonna go skin side down first, get it nice and crisp. We're using a cast iron pan here. Retains the best heat, cooked evenly. So we'll just go ahead and add a little bit of oil here into our pan. At the same time, we're actually going to cook some onion and some Swiss chard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in the onion and the stems from the Swiss chard. Don't be afraid to use the stems. The whole thing's edible. Too many people are throwing away too much product because of what they see in grocery stores. So we're going to go ahead and throw the onion and the stalks in here together, get those started. Gonna wilt it down a little bit. Season with salt and pepper. And then this fish is not gonna take more than, probably a minute aside. So we wanna make sure, in the interest of getting everything done at the same time. It also brings a really good, nice color to the dish as well. So really all we're looking for on this is just a little bit of translucency, maybe a little bit of caramelization. Totally up to you how much you want to cook them down. All right, so our onions have caramelized a bit. They've wilted down, they've broken down. We're gonna go ahead and put the Swiss chard leaves in there. Let's go with a nice hefty couple handfuls. This will break down quite a bit too, so put them all in the pan here. Season every step of the way. A little more salt, a little more pepper. Now at this point, while we let these sort of break down, we're gonna put our fillets skin down into this hot cast iron pan. There's a little bit of smoke coming off of there. The oil's nice and hot. We'll get a nice crisp skin there. Make sure you always lay it away from yourself so the oil doesn't splatter up at you. And then we always want to make sure that we're seasoning both sides. A little bit of salt on this side here, a little bit of pepper. Give these a little turn. See what we're doing here. All right. Add a little bit of lemon, a little acidity and freshness. Go ahead and check our fish here. Give it a little press here, make sure we get all the skin. Don't press too hard, you know, we don't want to squeeze the flavor out of the fish. We're just trying to make it lay flat here. Give that just another minute. Check on these. So our greens are nice and wilted down, ready to go. Turn them off the heat, and then we'll go ahead and flip the fillet here. Nice crispy skin. Now if you see here, fish, you can kind of tell when it's going to be done when on the outer edges here, it's no longer opaque. It's starting to turn white, whereas the middle right there is still very opaque and raw. So as soon as we flip this fish will be done in less than a minute. We'll go ahead and just let that sit for a minute. Just squeeze just a touch of lemon on top of this as well. All right, and that is it for that. We're gonna go ahead and plate this. We're gonna take a nice healthy portion of our greens and onions. Very nice little bed there. We'll do one of our fillets. And again, I'll flip this over and give you a look at it there. Not opaque at all. Cooked all the way through, but not, you know, not cooked to the point where it's flaking apart and dry. Lay that down. Finish it with some micro arugula. And there you go.